Ask yourself a question. You think a 10-year-old child needs to see this? Probably going to be banned from YouTube for pornography, but this is taught in our schools. Perfectly
This
normal.
is what public taxpayer money is
10
funding.
and up. So you people are paying, you parents are paying for this with your tax dollars so that your kids see stuff like this. I'm gonna make juice for my guest today, and with the help of Raina and Damon over here at Darkside Juicery. So gonna taste salty, like the liberal tears. So my new profession.
Need to work.
Yes.
So you need the bowl.
So my guest today is here. She's already there. Say hello, Domine. Hello. So juice.
So when Frank ran his juice through the juicer, nothing came out.
There's a straw. I gotta get more with the wraps on it. Frank made it for you,
Delicious.
so you can't blame us. It's not good.
No, it's
That's
delicious.
good. That's really good.
Like
Is
it?
it good?
Yeah.
Good. It's all organic too.
Today's guest is Domine Clemons, and pronounce that name correctly. Where is the? Never heard Domine name before.
Yeah. It comes from my aunt. My aunt is named Domine. And basically, what my parents tell me is that the root of the word is Latin, so a lot of people who may be Catholic or studied Latin, Domine means Lord, of the Lord, or with the Lord. And my last name, Clemons, comes from Clemens, which is mercy, so of the Lord's mercy, or with his mercy. So that's kind of the name.
Yeah. So Domine, thank you very much for your time today, coming to Firearms of America episode, I think 12 or 13. Not important. What's important is what you are doing for a community. You're part of the fight, a very important fight that I recently kind of started getting into. I'm more of a Second Amendment type of guy, but tell us a little bit about what you are doing. I'll let you do the introduction.
Sure. So I work for Florida Citizens Alliance. I've been working for them for now about 4 years. So I interned for a few years, and now I just came on full time. And basically what we focus on is fighting the indoctrination in our K through 12 schools. And by indoctrination, what I mean is that what is being taught in K through 12 public schools all around the country is political bias. There's sexually inappropriate materials. They're not teaching about true academics. There is definitely an agenda. People kind of get hung up on that buzzword, indoctrination. We use it a lot, and so I like to just kind of make the distinction between education and indoctrination. So indoctrination is when, let's say I'm a teacher and I have a student. If I were indoctrinating them, it would be teaching them something that furthers my agenda. So
Right.
it's not for their benefit, it's for
yours.
my benefit. Exactly. And education is for their benefit, for the students' benefit, to basically unlock their fullest potential in life, to unlock that beauty of learning. And so really what we're focused on in Florida Citizens Alliance is getting back to that kind of education, reading, writing, math, things that students literally don't know how to do. We have focused very strongly on the social emotional learning in schools, and we've totally left behind just basic skills that students should know. And we're pushing students through all the way through college without holding them back. We're really having high standards, and we can just see how many problems that's creating today.
And the Florida Citizens Alliance, was that the initial goal, to concentrate on the education system and basically do these changes to, or was it started for something else?
Yeah, so Florida Citizens Alliance was started about 8 years ago, and originally we were focused on Second Amendment rights.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, so that's my conversation right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
my boss, Keith Law, he calls himself an original constitutionalist, and he's really focused on, know the Constitution, know your rights, know your duty as a citizen. The government's purpose is to protect us, and so it is our duty, if we're going to take the benefits from a government, from a civilized society, then we need to understand what it means to be a citizen.
Right.
So that's kind of part of, what he believes. So we started focused on Second Amendment issues. That was before my time. But then it was around 2014, 2015 that Common Core became like the talk of the town, basically. Everybody was talking about Common Core, which really was the latest in a string of education reforms. But people thought it came out of nowhere because it really was so poorly written.
Right.
When they created Common Core standards, they, for example, for the math standards, they invited only one math expert to look at it and give their thoughts. And the only math expert, his name is James Milgram, he said, absolutely not, I will not sign off on this. These are failed, these are terrible standards. They hadn't tested them, they hadn't really done their research. It was just a total experiment that they pushed on students like me. I was in high school for Common Core. And that's kind of how I got started with Florida Citizens
So for
Alliance.
people who do not know what Common Core is, can you explain a little bit, elaborate on what's included in that?
Sure. So Common Core was basically, the idea behind it was that every state would have Common Core standards, so that no matter where you move, let's say I'm in 8th grade and I move from one state to the next, I wouldn't be behind or extremely ahead. I would be exactly where I was supposed to be. Well, the problem with that is it basically came down from the federal government. This was during the Obama administration, which is against our Constitution. The federal government, it's illegal for them to mandate education curriculum. So they didn't mandate the curriculum. What they did is they gave financial incentives to the state, saying, oh, if you want this funding, you need to adopt the Common Core standards that were written like overnight. It was really pushed overnight. Florida was one of the first states that was adopting these standards. So my class
Sounds
was...
like we needed the money or something.
Yeah. And basically when I was in high school, we were the guinea pig class. So we were taking tests multiple times a week in these little cubicle type things. They were psychological tests. They weren't being graded. No right or wrong answer. It was really all kind of creating and paving the way for the social emotional learning. Because what that's about is trying to change a person's behavior, their thoughts, their actions. That's what social emotional learning is being able to take somebody from here and see how you can kind of manipulate what they currently believe or how they currently act.
So do you believe that the Common Core, the initial idea behind the Common Core, wasn't really that much of getting all of the kids on the same page? And usually most of the times that's what we see. The left, they like to use their arguments based on emotions every time. Like, how can you not care about all these kids who are like behind? Let them be on the same page with this Common Core. But more of, instead of that, more of that tool that the federal government used to indoctrinate. And we all know, obviously, it was during the Obama era, so we all know which way, and I'm pointing right, I should be pointing left, the federal government was leaning.
Yeah, so basically, Common Core, the reason kind of behind it is that many of our leaders, the elite in our country and in our world want a global society. That's what they're going towards, right? Is this global one world order. They've talked about it for 50 years, you know, it's been talked about for a long time. And so with that one world order, UNESCO has made videos about this. Like, they're very open about it. UNESCO is the education arm of the UN, basically, and what they are talking about is that we want American students to be the same as German students, to be the same as Spanish students. Everybody needs to be the same so that no matter where you go, there's basically global equity. But what really ends up happening is America has now fallen. We are not you know, as competitive basically as we once were among other nations. We're not doing well at all. We're definitely not exceeding in STEM. You know, we're really falling behind. The vast majority of students are being left behind.
So how did you personally came around becoming part of an organization that fights for children?
So I started, really it all started, I say, when I was in 6th grade. Because that was the first time that I recognized that I was being indoctrinated. In my 6th grade American textbook, they were teaching us over and over and over about progressives. The progressives were the ones who were changing the world for the better, doing everything good, and they were slamming on Republicans. They had never done anything good for anybody, things like that. they were also teaching me that Margaret Sanger was an American hero, which I know is not true. This is the woman who started Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, I was just about to say, first of all, well, besides her reputation of, can't say, I can't find the word.
Eugenics.
Yeah, killing millions of babies. She was racist.
Yes.
Her goal was
Absolutely.
to abort as many African American babies.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too because apparently the cancel culture is canceling her now.
Now they
Planned
are,
Parenthood they're trying to kind of separate their
yes,
name from her. But I was being taught that in 6th grade in my school book, in my textbook. And so anyways, kind of fast forward into high school, I did a research project on the past 50 years of education reform in America. And I was so interested in the topic, and I was uncovering so much that I ended up writing way more than I needed to, and I was actually able to get it published.
Very nice.
Yeah. And what I was learning is that, again, as I said, Common Core was the latest in a string of education reforms. This has been going on for a very long time, about 100 years. A lot of it there's a lot of influence from our social emotional learning today, what we're seeing in Common Core. That actually all comes back to a lot of German philosophers, what they call education psychology, Dewey, Columbia Teachers University. It all comes through into America through that segue. And after learning all of that and seeing what my public school education was really meant to do, kind of change my behavior and my actions, that got me interested into doing more research. And so, you know, I left Florida for 4 years, went to Hillsdale College, and that taught me what a real education should be.
Yes.
And so I've been homeschooled. I've mostly been public schooled. I went to a private school for a year and then Hillsdale College. So I've basically seen it all. And really being able to compare the classical model to the private school model is kind of what led me to where I am today, to be able to speak on why the classical model is so much better, why we need to get back to quality education versus all of this emotional and this social experiment, basically.
Right. So, whenever you say classical education, explain a little bit the concept behind the classical education. Especially, what I'm interested is because it's supposed to come down to the state and not the federal government, right? What they're pushing in the public education. So, classical education being different between the states, how does that impact the education system in general, and what are the benefits of those differences?
So a few thoughts come to mind. First of all, when I say a classical education, it's based on basically a liberal arts education, which is composed of 7 different topics, basically. And so the liberal arts education, what's so beautiful about it is the purpose of a liberal arts education is to liberate your mind. That's why it's called the liberal arts.
Right.
It liberates your mind.
Not because it is liberal.
No, they've twisted that word against us. But it's to liberate our minds. And so at Hillsdale, even if you're an art major, you have to learn math and science and a language and all these different things because it really just unlocks your mind.
Right.
It helps you to understand the world from a holistic approach. And so, it's interesting. Most people probably don't remember what they learned in high school, right? They probably can't pick out a ton of facts. I mean, yes, we have some basic knowledge, and that's what's important. But everything that they focus so hard on these social issues and the political stuff, and there's all this outside garbage. Well, I personally believe, and it has been shown to really work through the classical charter schools we see, private schools that teach a classical model, and Hillsdale, is that when you teach young students how to think critically, you teach them good literature, you teach them about history, then as they go through life, they can almost take on any subject, they can take on any piece of material and look at that with a critical mind.
Yes.
And they have enough prior knowledge from history and literature and science and philosophy that they can understand and make their own judgment.
Right.
Instead, we give public school students a textbook, which is a summary of somebody else's idea of how history went down, instead of reading primary sources, instead of really reading the history as it was. So that's kind of the difference. And for example, in literature, in public schools, they'll have actually a public school version, let's say of Moby Dick. And in the back of every chapter, it gives you pre-written questions that somebody else made, the questions. Instead of giving a student a book and they come up with the questions, they use their curiosity and their critical thinking skills to think, I wonder why Moby Dick did this, or I wonder what's the meaning or the symbolism of this. Instead, they give them a list of questions, and you're not allowed to think outside the box, and you're not able to really think outside the box. And so then we have eventually, generations of people who fall in line, they stay inside the box.
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we are talking about right now, it sounds like, it's just a discussion between like people trying to push their political agenda on our kids. But let me tell you something, it is much worse than you think. So right here in our own Lee County. And that was news for me too. Whenever I heard your speaking, 2 days ago, at We the People event hosted by John Delaney. I think most of the people, most of the parents, they don't realize how bad it is. What is being pushed to our children in our schools. And I brought over here, it's a book called Human Sexuality Today. The reason I brought it is because that's the book I had to take for my master's, in my master's psychology. And there is some pretty explicit stuff, I guess you can say, some pretty explicit stuff. But all of that is done in a scientific way. First of all, second of all, it's for people taking master's degree. I've seen the book, and I'm really glad, because I wanted to text you this morning and ask you to bring it, and I forgot. But you brought a book, and should we show? I think we should.
First, I'd like to give a little bit of just a warning. Warning for anybody who's watching, because typically when I do presentations on this book, I don't even show it on screen, because I think people should look at it in person, but also because it is basically cartoon pornography. But this is for 10-year-olds. It's in the public school systems, over 1 million copies in print. It's called It's Perfectly Normal. And this is kind of known as like the best sex ed book that teachers can use. Well, it's not official curriculum, so that means that teachers can use it as supplemental materials. Supplemental materials, they don't have to go through the same process as textbooks to be adopted. This is, any teacher could basically bring this
just
into a
saying,
classroom.
hey. So basically you're saying is this does not have to go through as much of the review before putting it into the system as something that is a textbook and it has to be taught.
Exactly. So these were found in many public or school media centers, so the libraries, which they call media centers, and the librarians pick the books, right? The librarians order the books. Well, the thing is, we found this out actually from the Chancellor of Education, and basically he was telling us that the librarians are incentivized. They get actually a bonus in pay for buying books that are used more frequently. So when people say, oh, well, this is just in the media center, nobody's using it. Well, the person who's buying this book to put in a media center has an incentive to make sure that the books that they buy are going to be used either in the classrooms or the kids check it out. And so for this book, we found out about it because a parent came to us. The teacher told all the students, hey, go home and have your parents buy this book. So we know it's being used in the schools. My mom went to go volunteer at a few schools in Immokalee and found it all in their media centers. So, we did a public records request all across Florida to see where this is being used. And if people go to our website, goflca.com, and under the legislative tab, it's called our porn report, literally. They can check out basically which counties have this book in them. So I guess I'll show a little bit.
It's perfectly normal.
It starts
10 years
with
old.
making love. It talks about making love. All of the yellow is about transgenderism, and we believe that's, and I think most parents would agree, this is age-inappropriate material. This is the whole point of showing you this, is that for 10 years old, this is absolutely age-inappropriate.
Yeah.
So here's a page. I wonder why any 10-year-old needs to see all of that. To us, it's grooming children, sexually grooming them. This one's pretty graphic, telling people to go.
Yeah, ask yourself a question. You think a 10-year-old child needs to see this?
Yeah.
It does.
No.
10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15.
It shows, in the back, it shows, okay, I mean, so much stuff, it's so disgusting. It talks about masturbation. It teaches kids with pictures how to masturbate, again, at 10 years old. It says your parents might tell you that this is a sin, but it's not. It's actually perfectly normal. They use those words.
Perfectly normal.
So again, undermining the parents, undermining any morality. And it's really dangerous because, you know, I thought when I first saw this picture of all the different adults that are naked right here, I just thought, what about protecting the children who actually do have something weird going on at home, who
Yeah.
are actually struggling? Sex trafficking doesn't just mean your child is taken from your home.
Yeah.
It happens inside families' homes. And so when Florida is the third highest state for child sex trafficking, what happens when we're desensitizing children with this, telling them that it's okay and teaching them about consent at 10 to 11 years old? To me, that is just so disgusting. It's extremely evil for us to be doing that. We should be protecting children. We should be preventing them from seeing these types of things.
Let me get my camera and I'll show closer so that people can actually see it. Probably gonna be banned from YouTube for pornography, but this is taught in our schools. Perfectly
This is
normal.
what public taxpayer money is
10
funding.
and up. So you people are paying, you parents are paying for this with your tax dollars so that your kids see stuff like this.
Let's see.
Yeah, your 10-year-old.
I was just talking about, yeah, I mean, it goes on and on.
So, I hope you all are shocked and outraged with what we just saw. Now, if this video is banned at any point on YouTube, it will be still available on unbossreporting.com, so you can always watch it there because it's uncensored. Luckily, we have a source that we can talk about. But, wow, loss for words. What do we do about this? How can we fight this crap?
The first step is really educating parents. It's difficult to get a parent to recognize.
Let me mention, this is not the only book.
Oh, no.
You have a list
Yes.
of like, how many? Like 50 books?
44. 44 books.
44 books in the circulation. And I've read a couple of excerpts from those books. And some of the things are worse than this.
Oh, absolutely. They make me feel sick when I'm reading them. They talk about bestiality. There's books on, sexual assault. Very, very graphic. I mean, it just goes on. And these are all in our schools, in our public schools, again, being funded by taxpayer dollars. So the parents have no clue that their kid is being exposed to this kind of stuff, yet they're actually the ones funding it. So that's why we have to educate parents. Once we educate the parents, there's a few things that they can do. So first of all, we encourage people to visit our website we just created in the past year. It's called libertyscholar.org. And Liberty Scholar basically has a bunch of information on Florida scholarships that are available where you can actually pull your child out of the public school system. For example, the Hope Scholarship. If this kind of stuff is being taught to your child, the Hope Scholarship is applicable. What it does is if your child in a public school, it has to be in a public school, if your child going to a public school has been threatened, intimidated, harassed in any way by a teacher, by a student, by an administrator, by anybody on school property or a school-sponsored event, then they are immediately eligible for the Hope Scholarship, which is up to $8,000 per year. to go to a private school, basically, of your choice. Or you can use, there's like a travel stipend to go to another public school, but we do encourage parents to pull their children out, to use the Hope Scholarship when there's been an incident. And as a public school student myself, I frequently say that I believe every child in the public school system is eligible for that Hope Scholarship at some point or another, because students are being threatened, intimidated, harassed in many ways all the time. So if a teacher's teaching critical race theory, you're eligible. If a teacher's teaching 1619 Project, you're eligible. If a teacher screams at your child because their mask is loose, you're eligible. And so basically all you have to do, and I missed one point, is that the parent determines their eligibility. Nobody else determines. It's not the principal, not an administrator, not some board. It's the parent. So all the parent has to do is go on the Department of Education website in Florida. This is only applicable to Florida. They print out just a one-page application form, check the box, threat, intimidation, harassment. And then they just have to have their principal sign it, and the principal is legally required to sign it. So the reason I'm really pushing on the Hope Scholarship is because it is the solution that a lot of parents are looking for. There is no financial requirement or income requirement for the Hope Scholarship. Anybody's available. There's $70 million in this scholarship that's just waiting to be used. A lot of parents will come into issues with the principals because they won't really respect the parents when they ask them to sign it. So we just ask parents, get in contact with Florida Citizens Alliance, and we will actually take your case all the way up to the Department of Education. And we've won every single one very easily, but we just have to educate the principal.
So it's not something undoable.
No, it's very, very, very doable. It's just the parent needs to be courageous because there will be pushback. They'll be bullied a little bit, but that's because principals don't want, I mean, if parents just started leaving, you know, they lose that funding. So of course they want to contain the situation, they want to keep you there, but you have to fight for your kid, and Florida Citizens Alliance is there to help parents. The other thing that we push is homeschooling. We have to protect our children. It's getting so bad at this point. You know, we can fight on the legislative side of things. We can go to the school board meetings, but at the end of the day, your child is being exposed to this every single day in and day out. They have an agenda. If you went to the school board meeting, you can see they're not really interested in listening to the parents anymore. And so it's really important that parents start realizing that and taking their kids out. They can join virtual schools. Freedom Project Academy is a really great virtual school. Classical Conversations is a really good homeschool program. There's a lot of options, and parents always say, oh, well, you know, maybe they're a single parent or they're both working or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. If you prioritize your child's safety and their education, you will find a way. There are so many options. You just have to look for them, and we have a bunch of those listed on libertyscholar.org as well.
Yeah, exactly. Set your priorities straight. Your children are the most important things in your life, and this is what's happening. So Hope Scholarship, you can take them out to a different school, you can homeschool them, continue the fight. Doesn't mean we stop the fight. We still go to the meetings, we still show up, we still talk to our legislators about stuff like this and pushing them to do something about it.
And the last option, I would say, if you have no other options but to keep your child in the public school system, have the conversation with them every day.
And that was
Ask
my last
them
question.
What they're learning.
That was my last question for you, because you went to the public school and you still turned out normal, not indoctrinated. So what did your parents do? What was their contribution to help you get out of it?
So my parents had a conversation with me every day, and somebody told me the other day, well, you're very lucky because you have two parents who, you know, paid attention and things like that. Well, yes, I have two parents that are still together. I'm also one of 10. I'm the 8th child of 10, so they're busy people. They don't have time to sit down and talk about my day. So, you know, I have a bunch of siblings. I also learned a lot from them, lots of different perspectives. But my mom picked me up from school every day, and that was our time, that 15-minute period, that 15 to 30 minutes. She would ask me, what'd you learn today? Oh, anything interesting? any things you disagreed with or you want to talk about, and we would have discussions. We had a very open conversation, and so I think having that and actually learning critical thinking skills on my own with my mom through just talking about what I was learning really saved me. And also I had 2 years altogether, one in my 5th grade year and one my freshman year of high school that I was homeschooled. And that also kind of opened my mind because all of a sudden I had a very different type of curriculum.
Right.
So, I think parents, get your kids to read outside of school, get them to love learning outside of school, take them on field trips, take them to museums, spark that interest in learning and real learning. That's really what homeschooling is about, is giving the kids the tools and the keys and saying, there you go, find something you're interested in. So I think parents need to get more involved, no matter what that is, just having a conversation or pulling them out completely.
You heard it all. Domine, it was a pleasure having you
Thank you.
on one of my episodes. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys, don't give up the fight. It's your children we're talking about, so keep fighting. So, what kind of guns do you have?
I need to get one.
One for another guy. He like to keep pounding it. The other lady came back. Her name was Jackie. I have to remember. These people are so
Because they're so sweet. Huh?
I remember Jackie. She